welcome to the podcast. Today this is just going to be a fun episode, I think, because we're turning the table here. I have someone here who's going to actually interview me, but I'm going to let Suzanne introduce herself first and kind of give context to why we're doing this swap. But I am so excited to have you on the show, Suzanne. If you could introduce yourself to our listeners.
Thank you for having me. This is so exciting for me too, because I get to be the boss.
That's right. That's right.
So my name is Suzanne Doyle-Ingram. My company is called Prominence Publishing, and I'm a book coach and a book publisher. And I have worked with over 1,000 authors in the last 15 years, helping them write and publish books, all nonfiction books. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that later today. I'm excited.
Oh, I'm super excited you're here. And I love this. So she is here because today is the day my book launches.
Yay!
And we happened to meet at a conference last fall, and I've had this book in me for a long time. And we met through some mutual connections, and then we were off to the races. And here we are, not even, I don't know how many months later, not that long. And my book is launching today. So today we have, I'm going to show it here. We have the Happy Leader Playbook.
Yes.
I'll put the link down here for you. But Suzanne was my guide. And honestly, I wanted to make sure I said this. Suzanne is like a living example of what happy leadership is. And we're going to get into what that is. But you are always just such a joy to talk to and be around. And I always leave feeling really good about myself and really empowered. And that's the kind of leadership I think the world needs much more of. So thank you for all of it so far.
Well, thank you. You're going to make me cry. Oh my gosh. That's so sweet. Yeah. When we met, you know, what's so interesting, Jess, is that people say to me all the time, oh, you're a book publisher. I want to write a book. And then I go, okay. And then they don't write it. And then you actually said, I want to join your program. I want to do this. And you're just such a star because you know, it's almost like I'm a parent and that feeling when your kid does what you tell them to do, you know, well, I shouldn't say it's almost, I really am a parent, but I said, do this, do this, do this. Here's how you write your outline. You wrote your outline. I said, I want this chapter done by this day, this chapter done by this day. You really did it. And it's so amazing. And you had your book done the first draft was done within a couple months. Yeah. You're such a star. And it's a good book. It's a really good book. Really good.
Well, thank you. And, you know, your process helped me because my ADHD brain has, again, had this book in it for years now. But there were a couple things that are at play. And I think it's why probably a lot of people have books and don't get them written is one, it's really scary to put yourself out there.
It is.
To write the book and put it out into the world. But two, if you haven't done it before, it seems really daunting. So having you along saying, here's the next step. Here's what you do next. It made it a lot easier because it wasn't me writing a book. It was me with someone who's done it thousands of times writing a book. Which is great.
Well, you did all the work. I just told you what to do. It's easy for me. But I know what you mean because most people think of it as such a huge monumental thing. And that's why I don't tell everybody all of the things at the beginning because it's too overwhelming for them. Yeah. So we just work on the foundational stuff first. And then we work on the outline. And then you work on writing. And then we work on editing. And then we do cover design. And then we do typesetting. But if I tried to tell you all of it at once, it would never happen. But no, it's just amazing. So in today's podcast episode, I get to interview you, Jess. Yes. So where are we going to start? I have prepared some questions because I don't, I usually fly by the seat of my pants, but I want to make sure that I asked you all the things I want to ask you. So first of all, tell us about your book. Tell us the title again. And by the way, it is available on Amazon, the title and the whole premise behind the book.
Yeah. So the book is the Happy Leader Playbook, a science-backed guide to supercharging energy and impact. And this is a book that is rooted in the science of happiness and human flourishing, but it takes it away from an individual act, away from you do this so that you are happy, which is really important, But that is a lot of times where the narrative stops around happiness. It's like we have this entire field called positive psychology that explains how happiness works from a scientific approach, from an evidence-based approach. And usually we take all that research and all that wisdom and we say, no, go apply it to your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. But it also puts the onus on us as individuals for our own happiness and for our own influence. And what I'm trying to do with this book is say, yes, that's really important. We need to understand our energy. We need to be able to show up as our best selves. But there's also a piece of the puzzle where we have the responsibility as humans to lead from this place and to design a world and environments and systems and processes that not only allow me to show up as my best self, but allow the people in my sphere that I have influence over to show up at their best as well. And so this is really, it is a playbook, as it says in the title. It is a how-to for this very different kind of approach to leadership and to business in general. Because when we lead from a place of positive energy, all the research and science shows that increases engagement, it increases collaboration, innovation, problem solving, all those things we know lead to impact in the bottom line. And there's like even studies that say the workplaces that pour into their employees in this way, so they call them the top 100 well-being workplaces.
Nice.
They outperform the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones year over year. Like when you pour into your people instead of extracting from them, you actually do better. And so this is the roadmap, the blueprint for how to do that, because we don't have that anywhere for us right now.
I love it. And then in the book too, I like how you're talking about there's not really a separation between happiness in the workplace and happiness at home. So how did they relate to each other?
No, and I think that is so important too, because we live in a culture that assumes when you leave your house in the morning and step into the office, you can strip all that narrative and all that, like all of that story off of you and just focus 100% on your work. And that is not how we exist as humans. We don't
Yeah.
just like shut off half of us and go to work and then shut that off and go home. We bring our whole selves everywhere, and we're better when we're able to bring our whole selves everywhere. So like one of the 8 pillars of happiness, which I know we'll talk about the pillars of happiness during this conversation, because that's what I talk about all the time, but is authenticity. And it's the ability to show up as your whole self in all of these situations. Because when we're trying to shut off pieces of ourselves in different parts of our lives, we are not showing up at our best. And when we're not showing up at our best, we can't give that to other people. We can't share our light in the most impactful, meaningful ways. So you can't be one person at home and one person at work. You have to fuel all of it.
I think people try to do that too much. Yeah. Okay. So I was going to ask you, can you share what you do with the intersection of leadership and science of happiness?
Yes.
Kind of covered that already, but go a bit more into that.
Yeah, no, that it's a great question. So I founded Project More Happy back in May of 2018. And the whole premise for Project More Happy was to make the science accessible to more people. Because right now the science is out there, but it's in the halls of academia. It is, it's not available to everyone. And as I was building this business and doing this work, I really started leaning into, because of my background, because of, I came from the advertising world, corporate America. I came from those spaces of the environments where you're really able to show up as yourself and flourish and contribute at your best versus when you're not. And so it was this nice intersection of how can we apply what we know works on an individual level. How can we as leaders build systems intentionally for doing that out in the communities we impact? And so now I do it through happiness or leadership coaching through the lens of happiness, like the Happy Leader, right? The Happy Leader Playbook. I do it through workshops. How do you actually implement power ups that can change how your organization works and thrives? I do it through speaking because, again, at its core, and my mission in all of this is just to make the science accessible so that you can apply it and make a difference and an impact in your world.
I love it. Yes. And I think it's important because it's almost like people go, well, if it's scientifically proven, then, then I can implement it at work. Like maybe my boss's boss's boss would approve it,
Right. Well, and there is research now on how it affects ROI, how it affects retention rates, how it affects your productivity, how it affects innovation and creativity. So there are these data points now that make it a lot easier to sell through. But I also think happiness has always kind of been seen as this like woo-woo field.
Yeah.
Right. Like even I had, when I got my life coach certification a couple years ago, like it was really hard for me to go around and say I'm a life coach because it has that kind of woo-woo connotation to it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's just the narrative. Like there is so much empirical evidence as to why these things work. And so it feels woo-woo if you trust it without needing the research. I
Yes.
needed
Yes.
the
Yes. Yeah.
explanation for me to be
Yeah.
able to lean into it. And so if you get it from that woo-woo lens and you're firing on all cylinders, like good for you. My book is for the people that need the
The
evidence,
science.
that
Yeah.
need the science, because that's what my brain needed to be able to believe it and allow myself to lean into it.
And then you mentioned power ups. In your book, you have an amazing number of examples. And can you open the book and show
Yeah.
some of those power up examples?
Yeah.
Because I loved that. I learned so much from your book. And I worked with a lot of people from a lot of different industries. I mean, last week it was a dentist in New York, and next week it might be a chiropractor in Phoenix. I mean, it's all different. But your book, oh my gosh, I love the power ups so much.
Yes. Oh, well, good. Yes. So there are I think over 150 power ups. And
Yes.
there are
Yes.
different sections of power ups. So there are power ups for your home life,
Mhm.
work life, right? This is all from a leader's perspective. What you
Yeah.
need to happen at home to create more positive energy, what you
Mhm.
need to do at work to create more positive energy, and then what you need to do in relationships to
Yes.
create more positive energy. And power ups are science backed practices rooted in the 8 pillars of happiness that are simple, that are easy to implement, but they are there to create a spark of positive energy, like in the moment. So
Mhm.
let's see. An example, because examples are always important. So
Yes.
let's do environment power ups. So environment power ups it's a type of power ups for the house, right? Because how you navigate your home, whether it's an apartment by yourself, whether it's a single family home with, your whole family and kids running around, like what that space looks and feels like matters and affects your energy. And so there are a whole list of power ups for how can you infuse more positive energy so that your environment works better for you at home. And we'll do this one, the declutter blitz. So we don't like cleaning, but the word blitz makes it more fun. This is just you pick
Split.
one
Yeah.
area, and it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be big. It doesn't have to be like your whole kitchen. You pick one area and you declutter it. You clear it completely, because when you have clutter in your environment, it actually clutters your brain, and your brain has trouble focusing. So if
So
we want more
true. So
productivity,
true.
yeah,
It's
we get rid of
overwhelming.
stuff.
Yeah.
So, it could even be the refrigerator, the front of the refrigerator. I'm going to spend 2 minutes and
Yeah.
declutter all the papers and magnets on the front of the
Yeah.
refrigerator.
Yeah. But imagine doing that at work too, your office desk with paper everywhere. I just clear that off. It's like,
Yes.
oh, okay, I can breathe now. And I think people they underestimate that.
Well, clutter is physical, but it changes how our brain is perceiving the world around us. And
Yeah.
so when you understand, that's what I talk about, when you understand the science and how it all works, when you understand how your brain is responding to things, how
Mhm.
your body, that physiological response to things, when you understand energy in that way, then you
Mm.
can start designing your life to work better in your favor. You can design your life to be more energy giving instead of energy draining. And that's like the power we all have that I
Hey,
don't think we realize we have.
I know. How good can you stand it? Like, it just gets better and better and better.
Once you understand you are in complete control of your actions and responses and your environment, like I can't change how other people behave around me, but I can design for them to be able to be in a space that has better energy and better flow.
Yeah.
I can do that. They don't have to, it doesn't have to like force them to do it. It's not about, you're never going to be able to change someone, but you can set up the best circumstances for anyone to walk into.
Yes. Okay. I want to get to my next question here. So tell me about how the Happy Leader Playbook connects to your work that you do with businesses.
Yeah. So the Happy Leader Playbook is really, it is the work I do on a high level to explain how energy affects workplaces and how your energy as a leader. And when I speak about leadership, yes, it's at work, but we are leaders. Everyone is a leader, whether they realize it or not. You are a leader in your family. You are a leader in your neighborhood. You are a leader in any space that you have influence and interact with other people. You can choose to be a leader in that space. And so this book is all about real world examples, research, things that have been done and tried and have an impact on leaders who are trying to lead from a place that is human-centered, that puts people first, that understands that the more we put into our people and our world, the more they can give. So it's not about extraction, it's about allowing people to give. But these are the power-ups are things I work with leaders on. We design power-ups for very specific circumstances that might be going on.
Good. So you customize it
with their group, right? Yeah. So there's a power-up in here. It's one of my favorites that me and a group has ever come up with. And it was actually a church that was struggling to build face-to-face community again coming out of COVID. Like who can relate to that? Right? Like it was really hard when we first stepped out of COVID to remember how to engage face-to-face in person. And power-ups are all about like the easiest step you can take to make an impact. And so what we decided is, okay, what is something that everyone likes doing and puts people in a room together? And we created what's called taco nights.
I love that.
I did totally awesome community outings. And this group, this church would just every month, they would say, okay, we're meeting at this taco place in town. And it started out with like 3 people. And so many people now go monthly that they are talking about dividing into different groups because the taco places can't hold them anymore. There's coming up. And again, that's just you're leaning into a bunch of the different pillars there. You're leaning into authenticity. You're leaning into purpose. What is the purpose of us meeting? We want to be in community together.
Oh, and absolutely. What a beautiful win-win for everyone, not only for the church and the members of the church, but the restaurant that's getting all that business too. It's amazing.
Yeah. But it's not, that's, if you look at that in a vacuum, it's not a revolutionary idea, but it was intentionally designed understanding the 8 pillars of happiness and how they contribute to creating positive energy, which again leads to more meaningful engagement and impact.
Okay, you said that a few times. So let's talk more about the 8 pillars of happiness.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry, I don't mean to say you said that. I mean, you've mentioned the 8 pillars of happiness. So what are the 8 pillars of happiness? Did you make them up or are they a science thing?
I did make them up. So when I was on my own personal happiness journey, way back when, it wasn't that long ago, like 10 years ago, 11 years ago, somewhere around there. And I am such a nerd and I needed the science and research that I just like went down this rabbit hole of I need to learn anything and everything about, how to show up better, what happiness is, all of these things. And these 8 themes kept coming up again and again in the research. And when I say research, like, yes, I'm talking about sociologists and behavioral scientists research, but I'm also talking about like the Dalai Lama's books, right? Like, because
Yeah.
all of it tells the same narrative. And I kept seeing these 8 themes over and over. And so the 8 pillars of happiness, I always say I can do this from memory, and then I'm always like, am I going to be able to do it?
Well, yeah, now I'm put on the spot.
I know. Are confidence, authenticity, purpose, compassion, curiosity, optimism, gratitude, and feeling. And these 8 pillars are the skills. This is the important part. They are the skills that we need to practice to create more happiness in our lives. So I liken it to, I played basketball growing up. And that's probably why we have a playbook too, instead of like a guide or something. But
yeah.
When you want to get better at basketball, right? You don't just say, I choose to be better at basketball. And a lot of times we tell people to do that for happiness. Just choose happiness, right? Just choose to be.
That's so awful, because I've been unhappy at times in my life, and I'm like, I want to get happy. You know, I could just turn the switch.
But you can't just say it's what I want, and that's how you get it. So happiness is a skill, and the 8 pillars are the different skill sets you need to practice to create more happiness in your life. So with basketball, you need to practice dribbling, and you practice free throws, and you practice 3-pointers, and all of those different elements. And the 8 pillars are the same way. These are the 8 skills we have to intentionally lean into and practice in order to, 1, create more happiness for ourselves, but 2, design for happiness in our world. And so once you understand that it's a skill and it requires practice, but we know exactly what skill sets we need, then it becomes a lot less daunting to be like, I'm going to choose to create more happiness in my life. Okay, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to lean in on optimism. I'm going to practice being optimistic for a week.
Yes.
And if you do that, like, your mindset and perspective will totally change.
And catch yourself. You know, a long time, maybe like 8 or 10 years ago, I put on Facebook one morning, I just posted, here's something that my brother taught me. The first thing I say in the morning as I get out of bed and my feet touch the ground, I say, something wonderful is going to happen today.
Yes.
And one of my friends on Facebook told me ages later, she goes, that changed everything for me. Thank you so much for posting that. And I had barely even remembered posting it, but it's so true. You can really set the course with what you think.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things in the book, when I talk about there's a practice in here for practicing the 8 pillars in one day, in 10 minutes a day, right? You do 4 in the morning and 4 in the evening. But one of my favorite morning practices that's in the book is the practice of optimism. And it's deciding first thing in the morning why today is going to be a good day. You say today is going to be a good day because.
Yes.
And you choose something that you know is going to happen that you enjoy.
Yep.
And then like 10 things can go wrong in your day, but you've already told your brain that if this one thing happens, you get to count it as a good day. And what it does is it's telling your brain, and your brain responds. Your brain is now going to look for all the examples and validation out in the world that will validate the idea that it's a good day. Yes.
I know. It's so cool.
It's tricking your brain. You should trick your brain. Yeah.
I know. Well, I always say to my kids, your brain is actually quite dumb, and it will believe anything that you think.
Yes. Yes.
So that's pretty cool.
Train it to think better thoughts. Yes.
And you know what I love about your book too, and something that you just mentioned is so important, is that you're talking about a little, 10 minutes in the morning or 10 minutes at night. I find it quite overwhelming sometimes, some of the books and stuff that I pick up, where they say, oh, you can have it all, but first you just need to spend the first 90 minutes of your morning doing this. And I'm like, I work full time. I have an elderly parent. I have 3 kids that are all over the world, and I've always got something going on. I cannot commit to 90 minutes in the morning, but your book gives these quick little snippets. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I don't have a whole lot of time for this. I have young kids. I run my own business. I am very active in the community. I serve on boards. Like, I have a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I think most of us do. And so for any of this to stick, for it to make any impact at all, it has to be really easy to integrate into our lives. And that's the beauty of understanding the 8 pillars and understanding that they're a skill is, my youngest is taking tennis lessons now and they want to get better at tennis. And so last night I said, well, let's go out and just hit tennis balls off the back of the garage door, right? That's what you do.
Nice.
And we only had about 10 minutes before it got dark. And my point to them was 10 minutes, if we practice for 10 minutes, that's 10 minutes more practice than we would have if we didn't practice at all.
I know, and I think that's so true.
With happiness, it's like, just build it into your day where you can. Intentionally build it in the moments that make sense for you. And that's why I have so many power-ups in the book. And I even have how to design your own power-ups.
Yes.
Because the other thing that a lot of books do, and I've read a lot of books in this space, is they tend to sell it as a one-size-fits-all solution. And that is not how happiness works at all. How I need to practice optimism is probably very different than how you would practice it for maximum impact. And so the reason I have so many different ways and the design your own power-ups in here is because they don't have to be complicated, but they have to fit your life. They have to fit your lifestyle. They have to fit your needs. And so you're not supposed to do all 150 of them. You're supposed to pick 2 or 3 from each pillar. Or, if you're a team lead and your team is struggling with engagement, you can choose 1 or 2 and see which one actually impacts and influences your team for the better. So there is no one size fits all. There never is. We're humans and we're complex and we're all different.
Exactly.
And so I think the framework is almost more important than the strategies. Understanding how energy works, understanding that these are skills. That gives you the power and the tools to integrate them into your life in ways that will actually, 1, be sustainable, but 2, will be impactful.
Yeah. And realistic. That's what I love about it. Yeah. Okay. So if we fast forward to the year 2050, and let's say the Happy Leader Playbook has influenced a generation of leaders, what does the future workplace look like?
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Here's what I think in broad strokes, what that world looks like. It isn't cookie cutter anymore. It isn't about extraction. It is about pouring into people, pouring into resources. Because what we were just talking about is we are all different people. We all perform our best in different environments. Our brains all work in different ways. And we might not have known that 50 years ago, right? This is a new field of study, 30 years old. But when we can allow for people to show up as they are and contribute their gifts as they can, right? I'm going to hire you to publish a book. I don't want to give you the very thin guardrails of how you do that. If I'm hiring you for some expertise, then the future workplace needs to go, I hired you for this. How do you best deliver in this way? And let us build your system and ecosystem around that. It is not competitive. It is very collaborative, because if one person is good at something, it doesn't mean that no one else is, right?
I think we have
that success metric now, right? Well, if they're successful, then I can't be. So I don't want them to be successful.
Yeah.
When we lean into this, when we understand the science, we understand that we can all be successful because success looks and feels different for every single one of us.
Yeah. And how that collaborative work would feel so good at work.
Yeah. Well, and I think it is human nature to want to collaborate.
Yeah.
The struggle is we have built systems for efficiency and not for energy. And
Wow.
humans and our brains are not, well, our brains can be efficient. They're at their worst when they're efficient. It's
Oh,
how we
really?
fall into routines and ruts.
Yeah.
Because our brain says, oh, we've done this before. Let's only do it this way from here on out. It's trying really hard to be efficient. But what happens when we allow that, or when we build systems to further strengthen that, is we lose the creative problem solving. We lose the innovation. We enter a very black and white world that is very competitive, but the world isn't black and white. And there's so much joy in the color and nuance of it all if we allow ourselves to see it.
Yes, so true. Okay, so building on that
Yes.
future, what are some actionable steps that leaders can take now to get there?
Yeah. So my it's how the book is set up too. But
Okay.
there are really three things leaders need to understand, three steps we can take as happy leaders to create this future. And the first is to really understand our energy. Okay. We don't spend a lot of time thinking about energy or trying to understand it. There's a whole chapter in the book on the energy impact model, but we have to be able to do energy audits on ourselves. And what that means is say, what work, what people, what things in my life are energy giving, and which things are energy draining. And then how can I design this system, this workflow, this environment to create more moments and more things that are energy giving instead of energy draining. When we do that as leaders for ourselves, it compounds out into our sphere of influence. So we have to do the personal energy audit. The second one is really to remind yourself and to ground yourself in the idea of starting small. Because a lot of leaders think that big change requires this massive overhaul. And that's why we don't do it, right?
Yes.
There's no, until now, there was no playbook for this. So we just assume we have to, blow up the system to get the change we want. Change happens. Transformational change happens with intentional actions. And so those intentional actions can be really small. And so when I'm working with leaders, I like to remind them that, starting a meeting with a 60-second gratitude practice is going to have a lot more impact than reworking your work from home policy. You want more engagement from people, you can do it in these small intentional moments rooted in the science. And you don't have to completely restructure everything. It makes it more accessible and easier. And then the third thing is really just always coming back to the 8 pillars of happiness, right? If I'm in a slump as a leader, or if I feel stuck, turning to the 8 pillars, turning to the science and saying, what can I do to create more positive energy using the pillars, right? So some examples might be like if the trust is really low on your team, maybe you need to focus on the pillar of authenticity, right? You need to allow people to show up vulnerably. You need to allow people to show up as themselves, not as who you want them to be. That'll fix trust a lot quicker than some ping pong table perk that you think is going to bring people together.
Oh, that's a good point. I was thinking about, so we're all going to go on a canoe next Friday or kayaking trip or something like that. Or, some people might not want to do that, but you mentioned the word vulnerability. And I want to go back to step 1 when you were talking about doing like an energy audit. I think you were mentioning, and I went, ooh, I can imagine, maybe this is just my thought, but some of the leaders that you work with might not want to be vulnerable with you during this work. Like how do you fix that?
Yeah. People are not good at being vulnerable. We, from a cultural perspective, haven't prioritized vulnerability a whole lot. We see it, or we can see it and label it as a weakness more than a strength, right? If we show emotions, if we show up vulnerably, we also feel like we're going to get attacked and rejected.
Totally.
Show up as our true self. which is very interesting. And I'll circle back to this in a second. But,
Yes.
you know, when I'm working with leaders, the first thing is, if you know me at all, you know that I show up very vulnerably and bring my entire self into every interaction. And I think by doing that, it makes it a safe space to where others feel more comfortable doing that as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think
Yeah.
vulnerability is one of those learned skills that it's a lot easier to practice if the people around you are practicing it.
Yeah, true. And they're not going to get criticized for being
Right.
vulnerable or for speaking from their heart.
Right. I think
Yeah.
that the pillar that pairs really well with authenticity. So vulnerability comes from our authenticity. And
Mhm.
you're not supposed to pick favorites with kids. You're not supposed to pick favorites with pillars either. But I do have a favorite because it's the most natural to me. Like, it's always been the easiest one for me. But the pillar that pairs really well with authenticity is curiosity. Because when you
Yeah.
are curious, you cannot be judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you allow yourselves to show up with curiosity, with your team, with your, you know, coworkers, with me, and when I allow, you know, when I show up with curiosity, there isn't a fear of judgment, because we are practicing being curious, which strips the judgment out of it, right? There is no right
Mm-hmm.
or wrong answer when you're curious.
Yeah. I wonder.
It's
Yeah.
just the search for
Yes.
more
I just
knowledge and
wonder.
understanding. Right.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I will say, so I was going
Yeah.
to say, I'll circle back to this. I shared this on LinkedIn and in my email today as well. But it, you know, Brene Brown, because it's really scary putting a book out. It's
Yes.
very vulnerable doing that. But Brene Brown's work, and she has tons of books. We all know Brene. We all love Brene.
Mhm.
But her book, Atlas of the Heart, that really catalogs the different emotions that we feel and kind of the nuance behind each one so that we can have a
Mhm.
bigger vocabulary around what we feel in life.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite things I got from that book is the notion, not even notion, the fact that anxiety, right? Anxiety and excitement are the exact same physiological response in our bodies. The
Wow.
difference is how we choose to label them. So,
Yeah.
like, I have a lot of anxiety when I show up vulnerably, right?
And that
But
sounds
if you,
scary. Yeah.
right, but if you choose to say, I'm just excited to where this is going to lead me, it
Then it's
changes, it
positive.
shifts how you're navigating that response in your body.
Oh, I'm going to teach that to my kids. That's a
Yes,
really good one. Yeah,
yes,
that's awesome. That's
it's good.
awesome. I love that. It's probably one of the many things I picked up from your book. And I should have taken notes because I or get my yellow highlighter and read it again. I honestly, like, I just learned so much from it. So I want to get back to my question. So you talk about creating or co-creating a better future, one where workplaces support flourishing.
Yeah.
So what is one action that a leader at
Mm,
work could take right now?
yeah. I think I said it a little while ago, but it's the idea of start designing your life for energy and not just efficiency.
Okay. So yeah, the
When we, you
energy,
know,
what did you call it? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no. It's part of the energy impact model, right? The whole idea is design your life for more positive energy, right? Most places that we lead, they're built around different outputs, right? They're built
Mhm.
around deadlines and deliverables and doing more faster, and you know, we just want more, more, and more.
Yeah.
But high performance isn't really about efficiency. It's
Mhm.
about energy, because when we are able to have that positive energy and build positive momentum, build the positive and meaningful engagement, then you get the higher productivity. You
Mhm.
get the more enthusiastic innovations, right? You get all of those things that you want, but you're doing it from a place of positive energy and not from a place of control or fear or manipulation. And so if you walk away with one thing from today's conversation or the book, it's that we need to be designing our lives and our spaces and our teams for more positive energy. And we can do that through the 8 pillars of happiness.
Yes, yes. Well, it sounds easy in a way, but that's why they need you, because it's not easy. I mean, you would be the guide, just like I guided you through writing the book. You're the guide to guide through this. It's easy for you.
Well, but it's hard for me. It's so funny. I teach a lot of classes, and one of the questions I will get every time I teach a class is, "Are you always happy?"
Yeah.
No,
No, of
no.
course not.
I'm a
You're
human
human.
being.
Yeah.
The goal is not to be happy 100% of the time. The goal
Yes.
is not to fire on all cylinders 100% of the time, because that's not how we're built as humans, and that's
Yeah.
not what life is ever going to afford us. The goal is to understand your power and your ability to create more happiness when you need it, to get back to your baseline quicker, right? The power we all have to do that. Like, it changes everything when you understand that you can tap into that for yourself, and you can create more happiness. You can practice happiness. You can get better at happiness. The goal isn't to be happy. The goal is to be happier. And you can always do
Oh,
it. Yeah,
I love that. And it actually is a skill. It
it
really
is.
is, that you can learn.
I
Oh,
am
that's
I am
beautiful.
living, walking proof that it is a skill that you can get better and better at. Because
Yeah.
when I found this stuff, I was not in a good place.
Yeah.
And I love my life now. My life is not easy, but
Yeah.
I love my life.
That's so awesome. That's so good.
And
What are
yeah,
some parting words you can tell the listeners today? What
go
advice do
buy the
you have?
book. Go
Yeah.
buy the book. That's a good parting word. Um, yeah, go buy the book, the Happy
Available on
Leader
Amazon.
Playbook, over on
Yes. Yeah.
Amazon. And again, we'll put the link here. Go buy the book. Leave a review when you do buy it and read it.
Oh, yes, please leave a review. It really, really helps. And also, if you don't remember or you don't have the link handy, you can just look up Jessica Lyonford
Yes.
on Amazon. It'll pop right up.
Yes. So see, my publisher's here to tell you these things.
Yeah.
Go read the book, but I would say don't choose happiness. Choose to prioritize your happiness,
Mhm.
because that's the first choice you have to make. And when you make that decision, when you decide, yes, I want more positive energy in my life. Yes, I want more energy giving experiences and interactions. Yes, I want a bigger impact on my world. When you
Mhm.
make the choice to prioritize that, that's the biggest choice you have to make. And then from there on out, it really is just these small intentional actions that you make as you navigate the world.
Yeah.
The biggest choice is to say, yes, this is what I want, and I am choosing to prioritize it in how I show up each and every day.
I love it. It's so true. And just also, I think it's important that what you were saying earlier that really struck me was to not try to be happy like 100% of the time, because a lot of that is fake. And
It
I think
is.
that can be self-sabotaging. When you're
It,
going through something harder and you're having a bad or a negative emotion, and you just put a fake smile on your face. It's not, why is
yes.
that not good?
Well, so I like to tell people, because this plays into that, is we are taught from a very, very young age, like your first words when you are learning language. We
Yeah.
are taught that the opposite of happy is what?
Sad.
You're going to help me out. Yes, sad. That is not actually true. We need sadness for happiness.
Mhm.
Happiness is an action. The
Ooh.
opposite of action is inaction. The opposite of happiness is actually complacency. It's not
Oh.
doing anything. It's
Yeah.
that feeling when you're stuck,
Yeah.
right? So no matter what, if you want to create more happiness in your life, action is what it's going to take. And it doesn't take big action, but it
Mm.
takes action, because happiness requires action. We need
I love it.
sadness. We need
Yeah.
sadness.
Yeah.
And we are going to get sadness, and we're going to get anger, and we're going to get fear, and we're going to get all of those things. And it's really
Mhm.
important that we do, because
Mhm.
helps create the wholeness of who we are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can always be happier though.
So people know the book is available on Amazon through the title of the book, through the link that you can see here, or through typing in Jessica Lyonford, Lyonford. And how can they connect with you otherwise?
Yeah. So I was just going to say, because this is super exciting. I'm not even sure I've talked to you about this yet. But if you head over to jessicalyonford.com, there is a link at the top of the page that is the Happy Leader Hub, and it has all sorts of resources and goodies beyond the book. The book references some of them, but there's a Happy Leader meditation on there. There are worksheets. There are how to do action plans, like all sorts of goodness there. You can also contact me through the website. You can follow me on all the socials. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am everywhere I can be, because again, it's all about making the science accessible. I want you all to know it so that you can live into it, and so you can all design lives you love, and so that you can all empower one another and design a world where we can all show up at our best.
Yes, yes, yes. I think that's a good place to finalize this interview. I think that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, because this book is finally out of my head and out into the world, and that is because of you. And so I'm so grateful that we crossed paths. I'm so grateful that you've been on this journey with me, and that you came on and agreed to be host today on the Project More Happy podcast.
Anytime. I loved it. I loved it. And I loved working with you. Thank you so much for trusting me and just doing the work, doing what I tell you to do. And now you have a book, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It really can work that fast.
It can. Yeah. It can. It absolutely can. So if you have a book and you, reach out to Suzanne.
Thank you. And congratulations again. The Happy Leader Playbook. Woo! Woo!